All right. Hello. Welcome back from lunch. Again, I am Marcy and I'm here with Jennifer and we'll be your IDEEIC room host for this afternoon session. Welcome to From the Theater to the Classroom. Today's session will be recorded and shared through the Past Project YouTube channel in the coming weeks. This session is also live captioned. Out of respect for other attendees, participants will be muted. If you have a question, either type it in the chat box or unmute your microphone to ask, and Dr. Smith will be addressing those throughout the session. The beginning code for RID and IIC CEUs is theater, capital T, capital H, capital E, capital A, capital T, capital R, capital E. Again, the beginning code is theater. All right, take it over, Dr. Smith.
Hi, guys. Welcome back. Hope everybody had a good lunch. Just enough time to go have some lunch and then go, oh, I need my nap because we're home every day and we need a nap because that's what we do, right? Okay, so yes, your code is theater, and we are going to get right in with this one, with this workshop. For those of you who haven't been here earlier today, I am Dr. Sabrina Smith, and I am going to share my PowerPoint with you so that you can see all the glorious things. And I am going to share some knowledge today. I have actually been a theater interpreter since 2006. I have trained in the theater professionally with at Juilliard when they used to have the Juilliard Interpreting in the Theater program. And then I also trained Bringing the Stage to Life Nashville, which they still have, not this year, obviously. That one's in Nashville, and it's a fantastic program. Both of them are week-long intensives. Any place that I can go, any national conference, any workshop I can go to, I go to. They actually have a book out there written by an interpreter. I read the book, tabbed it all out. So I do have a passion for theatrical interpreting. And it's funny because people kind of automatically assume sometimes that that is something they're like, oh, that's not really my thing. And I get that. And it's not everyone's thing to go to the actual theater and do that. However, what brought this workshop, how it came up was I was actually taking some time off from work to go to the training for Juilliard years ago. And when I was taking off, I wanted professional development for this week that I was going to be off because it was professional development. And so the admin came back and said, how is this related to what you do every day in the classroom? And I'm like, well, it's like there's theater in the classroom even. And so then that caused me to start doing my research. And then I ended up coming up with this workshop as well, because what we do, no matter what type of interpreting we do, we're pretty much acting. When we go to work every day, we take our face off and we put other people's faces on all day long. We're not supposed to interject our own personal opinion, our own thoughts. That's something we work on constantly. We are trying to represent the people that we serve. So yeah, I came up with this workshop and it's one of my favorites. Again, it is a teaser workshop because we don't have that lovely stuff called time where we can work and do everything the way I want to. However, as with the last workshop, I am still going to try to get some in there so you can get a little bit of hands-on. Okay. So guess what? Same PowerPoint. I told you it was every one of my workshops. So safe environment. Today's workshop is going to be a safe environment. We're just going to try our best to have discussions in the chat box and unmute if you have something to say. I'd be happy to hear from you. And then we're going to be very respectful to everyone. I'm going to be moving y'all around my screen here. Okay, so first we're going to talk a little bit about just terminology. this is terminology that you'll hear me say when I'm talking. There are literally, I think I have on my bookshelves, there are like books like this related to theater and terminology related to theater. It's actually fascinating if you check out a book from the library and kind of read up on it. But when I'm talking today, you're going to hear me say things like a show, it could be a play, musical, concert, movie, it could be anything related. Because this is a classroom, sometimes people get that confused. If I'm saying show, they're like, I'm not at a show, I'm in the classroom. It can mean the same thing. I'm talking about just when you're doing that performance or when you're doing that interpreting in that moment. Performed just means interpreted, and that'll go vice versa. Prep material could be anything from your script, your lyrics, CDs, DVDs, any material that you use when you are prepping for any work that you do. Characters could be the characters in a play. They could be the singers at a concert, anything of that sort. All right, so now we're going to talk about some basic things related to theatrical interpreting, especially in the classroom. So there are some things that we need to think about. There are going to be some things that we need to consider when we're working. We want to think about our clothing. Are we having contrasting clothing with our skin tones? Even if it's in the theater, the classroom, wherever it is. There are all kinds of variation when you are working in a classroom setting. It could literally be in the classroom, and the kids can be taking on parts of a storybook that they're reading if they're elementary school. And I mean, they could be, you could actually be in the theater because it's the drama class and they're putting on a show. So we always want to wear contrasting colors anyway, but specifically when it comes to getting, if they're going to have something that's putting lighting on you more so, then you definitely want to make sure you're contrasting. No jewelry, and make sure your hair is pulled away from your face. This is one that I even have people question me on, working, whether it be in the school setting or outside. But if you're in the school setting and your hair is hanging down on your face too much, even this right here is okay, it's back, but sometimes people have like the little swoop here. If you're in the auditorium and they give you lights for, could be middle school, high school, elementary school, whatever, but they put the lights on you, what happens is if you have hair, even if it's just the slightest bit of hair, it casts a shadow across your face. And so you may think, oh, I'm good, I can see and everything. If I'm looking in a mirror, nothing's touching around my face, but it's what the effect will cause. Just like it depends on how the light is situated as well. So if I have, like right now, I have light coming from above me, okay? So you can see like the shadow coming from here. So I want to be mindful of that because if I had hair that was coming out to here, it would cast a shadow. I'm not going to leave my light on, but if I did this, I do actually have a light where you guys can see me much more clear. I didn't think I really needed it today, so I don't turn that on. But then that takes away from some of the shadow because the light's coming from more up this way. So even though we might not need that in an elementary school classroom for the little kids that are doing this, but if they're doing a play in elementary, middle, or high school, then they're going to have some lights there. If they're, especially the high schools have performance programs even, and that's the perfect time to start educating them on, yes, we do need lights, and we do need to try to avoid the shadows. Okay, remember, this is one of the big things when we are working in any type of theatrical interpreting, especially in K through 12, we are not the show. That one, we have to remember that we are interpreting and we are part of this show, but we are not the show. That means we want to be mindful. We don't want to be over animated. I need to use the person that I'm interpreting for as a gauge. Now, of course, if they're using something in their inflection of their voice to say something really strong and the little boy came, then I might get more animated with that. But I have to be careful of not going overboard. Because if you're sitting back and you're looking and the student's looking at you and looking at them, they're like, oh, they're not, if you're going too much. And you can also get this if that happens. They get embarrassed because they're like, okay, this interpreter's going crazy and that's not what's going on here. So we have to be careful of that just because we do get excited sometimes. Trying to move my chat box around. So again, we don't want to appear like we are the show. Now, respect your clients. Your clients could be the teachers or the directors. We need to respect the decisions that they make. It's not always a good decision. I'm just going to tell you that right off the bat. Sometimes we're the experts in our field and we know what works, but that's not always going to happen. So I might say, I really need to be here in this place because of that. And they might say no. And I've had that happen when we're in middle school and they're doing a play. And I'm like, well, we really need to be closer to the center of the stage. No, you're going to have to be off to the side. And I do my best to negotiate and to try to tell them why and try to explain everything. And when that doesn't happen, it's their show. So I try to educate as much as possible. But again, in the long run, it's their show. So we still educate, and then we're still going to end up following what they say. But education, try our best. So our consumer or our student, we do not want to embarrass our clients by any means. And that's what I was talking with by overacting or getting too dramatic. We also, we don't want to embarrass them if they have feedback if they're giving to us. So if they want to convey feedback of some sort, we need to be open to that conversation. So I want to work with them and collaborate with them. And even though sometimes if we do this and we're used to, well, this is the better way that this is, we try to discuss it. We try to have that conversation, but also we're just very, very respectful and mindful of our consumers. So preparing. As soon as you find out about an upcoming show, you're going to start preparing instantly. I don't know how your school districts are, and I don't know how they work, but it's one of those things that you need to have that discussion early on, because this means usually overtime pay. This means after hours working. This means prep time pay. These are things that they're not aware of. And if it's a middle school or a high school, even elementary school production, especially the high school ones or the middle school ones, because they're more in depth. High school, it could be a deaf student that's in the play. And then you have to make sure that they realize, oh, you realize we're going to be billing for every day after hours. I mean, this has to happen. Or you realize that if they're just going to the show, maybe a deaf person is called and they said, okay, we want to request tickets. They reach out to you. Then that's our time to educate and say, okay, you realize we have the day of the show, yes, but we're also going to have preview days. We're also going to have prep time, and we're going to have to figure out how to build that in there and at a reasonable amount. Here's the thing about working in the theater. You're not going to get rich working in the theater as an interpreter ever, and even in the classroom. So the hours you put into it, you're never going to reap all that back. A lot of people, the reason we do that is for a love of it. But when you're in the classroom, maybe you don't love it at all, but then you're forced to. Still, we want to be prepared, and we want to have all of our ducks in a row when we go into that. So just because I'm not a theatrical interpreter and just because that's not my thing doesn't mean that I don't want to take that time. So I need to let my administration know, or whoever, I'll actually be billing, hours for prep and hours for the preview and hours for the show. So I need y'all to know this going in, because there's nothing worse than them going, oh, we're not paying you for anything except for the 2 hours that you were there or whatever. And it's like, I did all this work. So we want to know that going into it. So ask for the material. It could be a book. When you go into the school that year, usually I ask the teachers, if it's elementary school, I'll ask them the first week or so. Is there a play that y'all do this year? Is there a performance that you do? And the performance might be, we were just working on before everything shut down. We had a big chorus. The student had made it into choir. And so they were going to the choir, all district choir or whatever. They made it to that. So we were in the process of prepping, making videos and doing everything for that. So ask them early on, because if there's a possibility, you have tryouts for something, the student might want to try out for that, then at least I have it in my head and I'm not shocked when it happens. If it is a concert, ask for the material. Most of the time, they are so willing to share with you. The material that I asked for recently, It's been going on this whole year, but I think it was during Christmas that I finally said, hey, can I, I know that they made it into the honors choir. So I'm like, do you have the material? Do you know what you'll be doing? As a matter of fact, I do. I'll email it to you right now. Are you kidding me? Yes. And so then I have all that material there and I can go ahead and start on it and start prepping, at a more leisurely pace by then. A copy of the script and the CD if it's a musical. You don't always get things like that. I ask, because you never know what you're going to get. Ask, because you might get it. But there's been times when they'll do something and maybe it's Seussical the musical or something that the school is putting on. So then I might have to purchase it myself. I might have to put it, or you can go online to YouTube and you can get music for free for everything. Borrow the movie from the library. If you know that they're getting ready to play a movie this week, again, from the theater to the classroom, this happens in the classroom. What happens at the end of the school year? Beauty and the Beast, Finding Nemo, like every cartoon out there in K through 12, the whole way up, they're showing these movies. So if I'm not familiar with it and it's been a while since I've watched it, then I'll go in there and refresh myself on what's getting ready to happen.
Excuse me, Dr. Smith, I have a quick question.
Sure.
In terms of billing for prep time, how does that work? If you're on salary as an educational interpreter, like how do you determine how much that is? Or I don't understand, how would you go about doing that?
Okay, that's a very good question. And you would have to figure that out with your district. So what happens with our district is we are salaried employees, salary. I'll use that term loosely. However, our salary is broken down and divided out into an hourly wage. Meaning if I stay after school to do football, if they join the football team, they pay me an hourly rate for those type of things. So this would fall under that in our district. So in your district, you might have to find out what does that look like when you guys do work overtime? Like if you have to come to a parent-teacher meeting that night, like how does that work for your district? So definitely ask the questions and find out what that looks like for you all. But I know that for us, it actually breaks down into an hourly fee. And then we put my timesheet at the end. I mean, we do it all online now, but I have to fill out an additional timesheet saying I worked this many hours this night. And then that goes on there and we get our hourly rate for that. I hope that helps.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Always ask the person in charge. That's a good way to get started. Whoever's going to be running the show, whoever's going to be, if it's the teacher that's reading the book, that's fine. Talk to whoever it is that's in charge. And I find most of the time everyone is willing to give. There's sometimes they're not, and I can research it myself, but most of the time they are. So also you want to find out the dates and times that anything, if it's going to be outside of your normal work hours, then find out in advance. When our show came up, I went straight. When I found out that the kid made it into honors choir, I was like, I need dates. I fly all over the country presenting. I mean, I do a lot of other stuff, not just work in K through 12. So I'm like, I want to be the one here. So I need to put that in my calendar now. So ask them early on. Most of the time they have these dates set in stone way in advance. They don't always tell you that until the week before, but usually the person in charge will have the exact dates. So plays and musicals. The first thing you want to do once you have the prep material, and it's going to depend on the show that you're doing, but here's how I prep for any show, and I don't care if it's out in the field, out in the community, or if it's in the school. I read the script. If it's a play, I'm going to say, or a musical, a play, I'm going to read the script. It can be in the kids' classroom. If they're going to read their little take turns, okay, you're going to be Sally, you're going to be Joe, these are going to be your parts. I read the story. If it's in a book, anything I do, I get that information out there right away. Read the whole thing first, just like it's a novel. Now, as I'm reading it, I'm taking a mental note of just the character layout. How many characters are there? But I'm just reading it, again, taking those mental notes in my head. Now, that is when I start thinking about how many interpreters am I going to have? So there should be 2 interpreters if you're doing a show. So let's say that this is a performance that's going to take place on a Friday night, Thursday night, whatever. It's the bigger performances that they have where the families get to come in. 2 interpreters. I'm not going to accept an assignment unless there's 2 interpreters, just because it's, I don't want to Jekyll and Hyde it up there. So I always 2 interpreters. If I can get a 3rd, if it's a bigger production, and most schools at the end of the year, they'll have Beauty and the Beast or some sort of big show, Grease, I don't know. They'll have some big show at the end. And so I start planning early on. I want 2 interpreters. And if I can talk my district into 3, then I try to get the 3. And it's usually great for a character, like dividing up all the characters, if you can do that. And these are, again, for the bigger ones that like are plays and musicals that happen at night. Now, when you are doing that, you've read the whole script. Now what you're going to do is you're going to go back and you're going to look through the script again, and you're going to start noticing the characters and the dialogue between the characters. So this is going to determine your character assignment when you're breaking this down for you and your team when you're doing the bigger productions. So it's not based on just, okay, I'm going to give you this character, you get this character, and that's it. Because sometimes the dialogue overlaps each other and it's like 2 or 3 pages. So you have to prepare for that in advance. So when I'm reading through my book, I actually will, okay, these are the characters, and then I designate the characters and say, okay, who do you want to do? Okay, I'll try to do the other one. And then I'll put those in there, but then we'll notice, and okay, these are overlapped. So both characters that I am are talking to themselves. During that time, you just go ahead and get the other person to do it for that moment. So it's a little better visually rather than one person back and forth. If it's something quick, then we just back and forth it real quick and keep going. Check the amount of male characters versus female characters, because that can actually be a lifesaver sometimes. If there's a very large show, I'm trying to think of a big show like Susical the Musical or something, like where there's a ton of characters, Newsboys or something, where there's a lot of characters coming out there at once. If you can, you just say, you do all the female voices, I'll do all the male voices. And especially if there's that interaction. But there are ways that you can just kind of change it up like that. You don't have to be so rigid. If there's a better flow for the back and forth, if you can do, okay, female voice versus, adult versus kids. If there's a lot of kids, if they're Oliver or something, then you can vary that within. So you don't have to follow this. It's whatever works best and looks natural. Then you have to assign your characters. So when you're assigning characters, it's definitely going to be based on like you have to think about things like your style, how you interpret. It can't be based on what you want necessarily. Trust me, I wish it could. So when I did, years ago, I did Wicked. Okay. When I did Wicked, I am Elphaba. Okay. Let's just get that out there. Okay. I am Elphaba. Okay. I was Glinda because what happened is the team that I'm working with, and we knew this about each other, her particular style of interpreting is she's a more laid back person. She has trouble being all this, she has trouble just, and I don't, obviously. And so she does. So we had to make that decision of, I'm Elphaba, but I can't, because the characters wouldn't have matched, or we wouldn't have been able to portray the characters as good if we just went with the characters that we wanted. And she actually loved Glinda. She was like, I love her so much, but she's like, I know I can't do that. I can't pull that off because I get it. She got embarrassed for whatever reason. So those are the things that you would want to take into consideration. Even though you're working in a school district, you still take those things into consideration, because this is still falling back on, we're still trying to put on a good show. That's the most important thing. Have to keep checking the chat box too. Once the characters are assigned, now you're going to go back through the whole script again, and you're going to highlight your characters. Go back, only your characters. You highlight your characters. That's going to give you the ability to see quickly, oh, why do I have 3 pages of no color on here? That means there's an issue. So I have these little tabs or whatever, and like I tab everything out. And so I put red on there, meaning there's a problem. We're gonna have to figure this out. Somebody else is gonna have to take something here. But it makes it, helps you focus on just your characters at that time, and then it helps you see any problems that might arise. Now, you might find that there's some of the shows that you're doing that there's nice, beautiful duets in there. I'm mindful of when there's a duet, trying not to sign over top of each other. The feedback that we've gotten, if we've tried to do that, is this. Like, okay, how can that be done smoother? So if you can practice, sometimes there's ways that you can make sure that that flow as they're duetting, that it'll go smoother rather than trying to just sign the exact same way at the same time. You know, one person might take the little side comments that, you know, are being sung, or and the other person might take the main thing, but they just do it at a smoother, nicer pace. And that's something you have to practice, and you just have to video yourself and practice it and get feedback. Get feedback from your deaf community. You know, take your phone with you to the silent dinner and go, I just want you to take a peek at this if you don't mind. You know, hire, if your school district will let you, hire a deaf interpreter, or just a person that's familiar with the theater. I will do that with a friend of mine who is in California, and he is all about the theater, and he went to Gallaudet and he studied theater there. And so I'm like, hey, Neil, can you help me out? And I'll pay you, and you, like, you know, or whatever, I'll take you out to dinner and help me out with this. And so, yeah, do that too. And if you are trying to do a duet, don't get too over elaborate with the signs, because that's when it can be confusing. All right, let's talk about those movies that they love to show at the end of every school year. Okay. So again, we want that information as early as possible. So if I know that you're going to show a movie, I want, please give me that information. I want to go home and I want to just watch the movie myself so I can get used to it. And I can take notes of any issues that might come up. So get it from the library, rent it yourself if you need to. Again, YouTube has everything. And if you do have to purchase it, consider it an investment. A lot of times I've got a bookshelf behind me full of movies and stuff that I know are tendencies that come up in the school district. So I'm like, okay, I've got Macbeth already. So if I need to, because it's something that they watch, you know, it seems like they do something Shakespeare every year. So I have quite the library actually of Shakespeare Made Easy, those type of books. And so if you go ahead and buy that, write it off on your taxes. If you're a freelance interpreter too, you can take that off on your taxes. That's study material. So these are just some that I've done. I just threw a few in here that I've done all the time. So Nemo is science, right? So a teacher in elementary, oh, they can show Nemo every year and get away with it because it's science. It's good science, actually. I love Finding Nemo. That's my favorite one. But and teachers can use that. So it's one of those things that I can prepare myself for. A Raisin in the Sun, that's a classic. And usually our district and your district may be different. But that's how come I say go, especially in the upper grade levels, the middle school and high school. That's one of the first things I do at the beginning of the year is I say, is there any required readings that you do? It could be The Great Gatsby. Obviously anything Shakespeare, they're always going to do in the upper grades. So they usually will have something that they just tend to do every year. Even in elementary school they do. So I always ask. Scarlet Letter, Romeo and Juliet, those are just a few examples. How are we doing out there? Everybody good? Okay, keeping an eye on y'all. Making sure nobody's in a food coma. Okay. And if the movie is based on a book, read the book. I know your schools are probably like mine. When you go in, they'll do a I mean, even this year, they start out and they're like, okay, we're going to read this little story about the Hunter Island or whatever, you know, whatever. And they do this. And then at the end of it, they happen to have a film that matches it. So they try to keep these things where in the end you get to watch a movie. So they read the book part and then it gets to the movie. Great Gatsby, another really good one. So they read the book together as a class. And then at the end, that's the treat. They get to watch the movie and fill out the paperwork, whatever. So what I'll do is I'll say, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and read the book. So even if it's not gonna be to the end of the year, I'm going to go in there. Let me go ahead and check out this book now, and I'll start reading it now. Keep it in my interpreting bag. Got some downtime? Oh, what you reading there? I'm prepping for what they're doing at the end of the year. Or I'm prepping for what they're doing. Keep Shakespeare with you. If it's at the end of the year, get it at the beginning of the year. Keep it with you the whole year. Because Shakespeare going to be a little tough. I'm just going to tell you. Now, I happen to love Shakespeare. So my teams, when we're together and they find out it's Shakespeare, they get real excited because they're like, yes, because you love it. Although a lot of my teams are like, ugh, I don't, but I happen to love Shakespeare. So. Okay, now when we're talking about, I know some of you are thinking, we don't do that in elementary school. We can't necessarily do characters if it's a movie. We're doing all we can just to, you know, I don't even have a team in there to do that. And I get it. And so we're just going to do the best we can. We're going to try to follow all the other advice so we can get that role shifting and eye gaze and get that practicing on that, which is awesome too. But if I can, and if I can use my team, how awesome would that be to, even if the kid's watching The Lion King, and to be able to sit up there with you and your team side by side and do characters rather than just the 20 minutes on and off. How visual would that look for the student? So if we have the ability to do that, it's a cool thing to do. I've done it. I've done it just by myself too. You know, you never know what we get stuck with in educational interpreting, and we just do our best. But it's kind of cool if you can do that. It's like, okay, let's do this whole thing, you know, Sabrina's talking about. Let's divide up the characters and let's do our best. So it's very nice. It's very visual for a student. Remember, if you have any questions, just chat, put it in the chat box, or unmute and say, hey, lady. Yes, the school library, they're very helpful. Concerts. Ask the music teacher, I talked about this before, to make a CD. Try to download the music yourself if you can. Here's my thing. Now, when it comes to chorus and music in deaf kids, and I'm just going to tell you this is what I've heard often, actually, from interpreters. I probably made this comment myself back when I was younger into this profession, but people will say, it's a deaf kid. Why do they, I mean, it's dumb that they're taking music or whatever. So, and you've probably heard people say that yourself. Why does the deaf kid want to take music? Or why are they giving the deaf kid music class? Why don't they give them double PE or something like that? Okay, so in that, again, I don't get upset with people. I just think, okay, it's a lack of education. Let's figure this out. Let me educate you. Because, and at this point in my career, if the student I work with doesn't love music, honestly, I almost take it personal because I work so hard to make sure even the smallest detail in elementary preschool music class is very visual, that I want them to fall in love with music. And I want to give them every opportunity to do that when I'm signing, when I'm interpreting that. So I'll use anything at my disposal. I'll show them what music looks like. And then they will fall in love with music. So I had an old way of thinking. I had to be educated myself. And now that I try to pass that education as long. So, well, I have failed at that. Okay. And again, it takes a different way of thinking sometimes. It takes, and they won't always still fall in love with music. The student that I worked with this past year, it would literally be when we would go to music, and I told you, they got into honors choir. So they ended up loving it, but on the way there, I hate it. But then by the time it was over with, they were literally on their feet, signing and going crazy. So it's a matter of they started to be able to feel, for one thing, because some tricks with that are, you can take a water bottle and fill it, about halfway full or whatever with water, and they'll feel the vibrations. So that's kind of cool. If you have a concert, you can blow up a balloon and you can let them hold the balloon. You know how the bands come to the school sometimes in elementary school, let them hold the balloon and they can feel the vibrations of the balloon. We also, when the teacher's playing the piano, let them put their hands on the piano so they can feel the vibrations, or any microphone, any speaker that's in there. These are tricks that kind of help them start getting that feeling, and then they see the visual that goes with it. And we'll be interpreting things like, if it's really like high and squeaky, we'll get up here and then we'll start getting down here. We use these non-manuals and these classifiers to show it, and then it becomes visual, and then they start to have that love for it. Oh my goodness, I would love, I have worked with a friend of mine that I told you about that is my coach. And as far as a lot of this goes, we have not had anyone in our school district, which again, that would be amazing. And I advocate for that highly, and I would love for them to hire someone for us. I have high hopes that they will one day. All right, so memorize your songs. If there's songs that you're doing for a concert, when the kids have their little shows and their parents are gonna come to their 5th grade promotion ceremony or their kindergarten promotion ceremony, they promote everything. They do these little songs. Have your songs, memorize those songs, be ready for them, because that's gonna help you too, especially if you're in the seat of, I'm not necessarily interpreting the show. I'm your signing model here for a second while you're trying to remember your words with the rest of the kids with you. So make sure that you have that ironed out as well. Research the lyrics. We want to look at the lyrics, any type of concert, especially if it's the older kids. And I'm going through, I print all the lyrics for whatever song that I'm getting ready to do, and I save those. And then what I'll do is I actually go back and I research the lyrics and what the artist was thinking when they wrote it. That helps me understand the music and understand what I may need to interpret, because some of it I might think that it means one thing and then it means something else. So that helps me get a grasp on the songs and what the artist was going for. And even if it's elementary, my team and I'm like, which songs do you want to do? And we try to pick it as not which songs do you want to do? We're hopping up and down. We don't do that. It's like you take the first half, I take the second half. So it's visually just an easy switch when it's the next person's turn. So we try to get that song list right away and say, what order are you doing these in? Of course, both of us work together when we're practicing and rehearsing. So if they switch something up, we could manage that. But because we're working together, I know what she's signing. So if we have to, we do, but we try to get those lists so that way, even as we're getting towards the end, you do these and you do these. We talked about the duet a little bit. Talked about finding the meaning to the songs. Especially, I give Beatles as an example. Some of their, not just the Beatles, but I just give them as an example. There's a lot of their songs that have different meanings to them. What was it? They had this one song that they just kind of spit out words. And so I was like, what are they trying to go for this song? And so I researched and it's like, we were trying to make no sense, which was awesome, because then I got to just throw out the signs that kind of made no sense. So the hearing audience was going, that didn't make any sense. And the deaf audience like, that didn't make any sense. And it's like, yep, that's the goal, it's like visual. You can clearly see the signs and you're like, I know what that is with these words. So it can give that same experience. Okay, additional surprises. YouTube videos. Yay. They put caption on, don't worry, guys. I can hear you all laughing now. Oh, because don't you love that though, when you go into the classroom and they're like, well, I'm gonna show a YouTube video, but don't worry, it has captions. And I'm like, have you read these? I mean, did you Do you see the curse words at the bottom? Do you? Okay, just checking. I'm going to go ahead and interpret this anyway because yeah, I don't trust that. Now, additional surprises can also mean, I have a whole workshop on family life, and in some of the things that they'll have, it could be things related to suicide. So there's songs that will come up that could evoke some sort of emotion in you as well. So we have to be prepared for those type of things too. If I knew it was coming, then I'd have it prepared. But a lot of times the teacher might just throw something in there off the cuff, and I'm like, oh, I'm stuck and I'm interpreting the song, and oh, wow, got some sort of feeling about this too. So be prepared that there can be additional surprises. Also be prepared for the cast deciding to include you in the play. That happens too. We were doing a Christmas Carol one year, and we're just interpreting our little hearts out down there, and here comes the cast with snow all over the top of our heads. Yeah, we didn't expect snow to be coming over the top of our heads. So we're like, and literally my team, we kept on, the show must go on. So we're doing our best, and, you know, we're making light of it too, trying to be part of the act. And my team was like slowly trying to, you know, my hair, like getting it out of the back of my hair when she could reach it. That's teamwork. Oh, yeah, interpreting the video when the lights are out. I love people. The great thing about these guys is they have a flashlight on them now. So we will put them, I know they're bright, but we'll put them down low and face them in a way that's not directly on the interpreter. So we'll do our own lights. I usually even have a flashlight in my interpreting bag. And here's the thing. If you don't do theatrical interpreting, then these are things that you might not be used to. And that's at the end when the cast comes out. A lot of times they honor you, so they're giving the honor to the light people and to the music people, and then they turn around for you too. So those are little things that we want to be prepared for, because when the cast comes out, we want to be honoring them as well. So we want to be just like the audience and turning and honoring them. And then when they do, if they don't always, but if they're being trained right, they're supposed to. It's the way they do it in New York. So if they do honor you, then you can, say your thank you and thank you to them. So you'll be prepared for it, rather than, oh, hey, they're smiling at me. So then we can kind of thank everyone at the same time. So here are ways to research. Now, YouTube is a friend. You can pretty much get almost any song out there through YouTube and get a lot of great information. So get all the information from YouTube that you can of anything that comes up. They're definitely my favorite. Ask around in the deaf community, or ask, any community theaters, anything like that. So you might run across, if you talk to your deaf community, you might run across one of your deaf community members that's like, I studied like this, that's what I did. I was in Deaf West Theater, so you can have an available resource there. And as I said, if you're going to use a resource like that, then make sure that you compensate them as well, because their time's just as valuable as your time. So if the school system's paying you to stay after and do all this stuff, try to make sure that even though the school system might not hire them, it doesn't mean that I can't hire them. So I can say, okay, the school system's paying me my hourly rate. I'm going to give you so much of this if you're willing to help me with that. Then again, like I said, advocate. You never know when your school system might, and that could be the seed that starts into, let's get some CDIs in our district. Spark notes. Oh, I love Spark notes. Print them in the library, because then you don't have to pay for them. I'm all about using those resources. They tell me, why do interpreters need a printer code? Like, because I'm not going to print all this stuff at home that you're going to be, all these plays and stuff that you do in school, or all these readings that you do. And nowadays everything's digital. So they'll give you the code for something, but just because you gave me the script through my email doesn't mean that's going to work for me interpreting. So I'm going to have to print that out so I can do my notes on it and do my markings. Shakespeare Made Easy. I told you about those. Prepping for your work. This is what we were talking about before. This is like the previewing of it. So we want to, anytime that we are able, we want to attend rehearsals if we can. Excuse me. I've been talking all day. Go ahead, take a drink. Y'all go ahead, have a sip. Y'all like, who is this weird lady? Okay, so if they have choir rehearsals, I know, Mountain Dew. All jacked up on Mountain Dew. All right, elementary, they have days usually that they'll have designated for rehearsals because they're not going to stay after school usually. If that happens, let's go worst case scenario because I'm a worst case scenario type of girl. I'm going to do that first. So worst case scenario, I looked at my calendar. You know what? I can't do that day. So what I usually do then is reach out to my lead interpreter and say, hey, there's a choir coming out for the elementary school. Our student is going to be in the choir. She's in the choir and they're going to have a concert. And I can't be there. Now I'm here to prep and help in any other way that I can leading up to that because we have to be there every day for the academic part. But is there a way, first of all, can we find out who will come and who will be the person to team with my other team? Then they can reach out and find that person. And then I can say, you know what? They always have rehearsals during the school day on Friday during resource. Is there a possibility that that person could be sent over here during that time to watch and then start getting their own hands-up practice? Again, it's all about asking for it because we've gotten that. We definitely have gotten that. And they're like, yeah, they can come over there on Fridays and practice or whatever. We'll move interpreters around sometimes, depending on how big the production is or what's needed. High school and middle school, they have their rehearsals too, but usually they're in the evening. And again, we want to go to those. So we want to try to catch one of the earlier performances if we can. So a high school will usually have a run of them. So their shows will go on like 2 weeks or something. I don't know. That's a rough estimate. So I try to go and preview it at least once, a minimum of once, and if I can, twice. My school district's not going to pay me for going twice. They'll probably pay me for going once. But I try to at least go once and get that preview in and just see the overall what's going on. In what I call my perfect world there is I go preview it once just to enjoy it and watch it. Then I go preview it again and I sit in the far, far back or I stand out in like a duck in a hallway or something where I'm not in anyone's way. And we actually do a hands up rehearsal. Like we have our own rehearsal so that we can get our practice in before the actual getting out there. I do that here and I do that out in the community as well. And make sure you go with your team. If you have a team for one of these bigger productions, find a date so that you can go together because then you're going to compare your notes and say, did you notice that you said this particular thing and then I say it right after you? So what are you going to use for that? Like, what are you going to sign for that? Because I want to sign the exact same thing. Because there's nothing worse than getting out there and you do this and they do this. And it's like, why are they signing two different things when it can definitely work out better if we have that discussion. And you have to be flexible because things are going to change. You get all planned out. You have your little notes. Trust me, there's a whole thing back here you can't see that's nothing but scripts. I have done over 100 and some plays and I keep my scripts and there are tabs and everything everywhere. And you think, yes, I've got this. And then you go in there and you discuss with your team and you nope, don't got it. What do you think? Okay, that's what we're doing. Okay, then we're going to change. So be flexible. Don't get your heart set on it has to be done this way because it's going to change. Also, be kind to yourself because I have so many times in my career, I have been talking to my team at school and it doesn't matter elementary, what level that I'm in. I'm like, okay, this is what I'm going to do for this. I'm so excited. I've planned this out. And I'll sign. Doesn't that look good? Ooh, that looks good. And then performance time comes and something else comes off these hands. And I'm like, I don't know what just happened. And my team later is like, I thought you were going to, I thought I was too. I don't know why, but my hands had something different in mind. Sometimes it comes off better. Sometimes not so much. I remember I was interpreting one thing and they were talking about sex in the show. They said something about sex and I did sex, gender sex. And I had very explicitly talked with my team about, no matter what I do, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to have to do like the more friendly one, sleep together type of sign, because it was, didn't want to be too graphic for whatever the content was. I can't remember now, but I remember this part of it. And so but this, no, because that's gender. So we're not really doing that, even though deaf people will use that for sex sometimes. So what do you think I signed when the performance came up? Sure did. I afterwards, I looked at my team and I said, did you? And she was like, oh, I saw the sex side. And I was like, what in the world? So don't beat yourself up though. We can't dwell on those type of things. It's trying to put the performance out there and make the show just do the best you can so that they're having a good time and they're, everybody around you is having a good time and they get that representation of the show. Check the chat. Oh yeah. Be prepared to chat to interpret. Sometimes if a deaf parent, let's say, comes to the show, or their kids there and they're in their little chorus thing, afterwards, either the deaf parent might say, oh, I want to go talk to the music teacher, or I want to go talk, if it's the bigger performance, I want to go talk to the director. It could be the student want to talk to some of the cast members. So be prepared for all of that type of interaction as well. And they have question and answer sessions after them sometimes for people that just want to holler out in the audience and ask questions. So be prepared for those type of things too. So the placement can be tricky sometimes. We know where we want to be. I want to be, for most of the shows that I do, I would love to be close to almost like just off center stage in the very front and just like the stage like right behind me, so that they're literally, and the deaf client right smack dab in the middle, so they can just literally see everything looking past me. Does that happen? Nah, rarely. It will happen sometimes, but the quicker we have the discussion, the more likely we are to get in there. We actually have, and I haven't done it, and I would love to, but we have a high school in Virginia, in Lynchburg, Virginia, and it's Lynchburg Hands on Stage, I think is their Facebook page. They do shadow interpreting, and it's amazing. So my friend, my two friends, Amber and Catherine, they do a lot of that stuff up there. So they literally are on the stage in costume. If you've ever seen Big River, I don't know if you've ever seen Big River, but it's like one of the New York Broadway ones with shadow interpreting. If you've ever seen that one, it's amazing. But it was a long time ago, but you could probably catch old videos of it. But anyway, they're doing, oh, Todd, that's amazing. I want to do one. I've brought it to our attention of our area for many times, not yet. Next time I'm in a high school and I do get the chance to try again, I'm going to try again. I won't give up on that one. I'm going to keep trying, because I have gone to see them. It looks beautiful. There's nothing like it. The access that the deaf consumer is getting, it's just like, oh, I don't have to look over here and look back at you. I don't have to worry about looking at top your head. You're there. You're already there in the show. And it's really amazing. I definitely suggest you do some Googling on that. They have a lot of videos out there with it. All right, so if you can have your own dress rehearsal. I was just telling you about that when you're even back in the corridor, even if you have to. Oh, so when you're doing like Seussical the musical, or if you're doing for the elementary school, the kids, I try to, even if it's story time in the library, if I know the book that's coming, and I try to ask those things, especially Dr. Seuss month, his birthday, I try to find out what it is, and I try to use my non-manuals. I try to use the acting part of it, showing classifiers, everything that I can, rather than holding on to those words. So I try to show them, same as I said in the last workshop, show me, don't tell me. I try to give them that visual experience of what that means. And also I'll Google it, I'll see, sometimes you'll get on YouTube. I did one Proud Mary. I did Proud Mary, that song, one time, and I was Googling, and I found a deaf kid at a deaf school in the bathroom, and she was doing Proud Mary just on her own for whatever reason. Oh, don't you think I didn't steal some of the stuff she did? She was amazing. I loved her. So Yes, look for stuff like that and try to include that in it. Foreign language. Now, here's the tricky part for that one. Sometimes what I'll do is will actually translate the language and put it into the ASL. That's one thing I have done. And all of this depends on the situation. I've actually looked up, like if it was French, I looked up French Sign Language, FSL, and I tried to get the equivalent if it was a clip and tried to do the French Sign Language. So they're still seeing sign, but they're going, huh. But the same thing with the hearing audience. So they're going, huh. But they see kind of that there's a difference there. If I can preview, usually we'll have like a precursor to the show, like if we have a deaf audience, and we'll say things like, oh, these are the name signs that we're going to use, oh, this. And I try to let them know that. You might see some French Sign Language in this one because, so I don't want them to just feel like, why is this happening? I want them to get that same feeling that that hearing audience is getting. Hope that makes sense. Okay. Rehearsals can be done anywhere. As I said, I've done it in the hallway. Anywhere that I can get that, anywhere that I can practice. And some field trips actually are to the theater. We have field trips to the theater around here. We go to the symphony, we go to the theater, the ballet. I think they do a lot of cultural field trips in some of the schools, not all of them, like some grades. So you can, then that's another one of those sticky things. You can reach out to the theater because I work for some of the theaters around here. So what they do is they contact me and they try to hire me to come in, but I'm working in the K through 12 already. So if that happens, what I'm more than willing to do is I will like, okay, I'll tell the theater groups that I work with, give them the script, give them this, give them that. And because either way, some people have like, they should be providing the access and they are, but not, they can't always find it if the interpreters aren't there during the day. Or some schools, like their interpreters want to, they're like, oh, that's cool. That'll give me some experience and, safe environment. And so I'll try it. But you definitely can reach out and ask them to provide interpreters as well. These are just some of the places. I have sat right here in my house. I have pulled up chairs right in front of that television, had my team come over, and we put in the movie of whatever it was we were going to be interpreting. Even though they're different, the movie is always going to be a little bit different, but it just gave us that practice so that we felt more prepared. And then this will help you with any of the decisions that you'll need to make that might come up. And some of those could be sitting or standing. I don't like to sit if I'm theatrical interpreting. However, I was just before all this went down, I was in the city of Richmond, and a company had hired me to go up there. And it's one of those that you couldn't stand. The theater was so tiny. If you'd have stood, the hearing people wouldn't have been able to see. So sometimes you have to be flexible with that. I don't prefer to sit, but sometimes you might have to. And when it does come to your chairs, try to get chairs that are comfortable, not ones with arms, because here's me. I'll be all laid back going, yeah, interpret. You can't trust me with anything. I'm going to need a stool, maybe a comfortable stool, but don't give me something with arms because I'm going to get too comfy. Okay, we already talked about getting the movie. And if you are in the school district, try to do this on your planning block. If you have some planning time, I know some of you are like, planning block, what's that? But if you do get planning time, or if a student's absent one day, sometimes we go, like if our student's absent, we usually go team with another interpreter that maybe doesn't have a team that day. But if I have a show or something that might be coming up, or if I have a book that they're reading aloud in class, then I'll just ask the lead. I'll say, hey, we're working on Shakespeare right now. Do you mind who's alone, and am I really needed? Can I spend some quality time doing this? A lot of times that works out. Yes, I like at Sorensen, you have the chairs that you can pop and move the arms out. And I really wish I had that for my house even. But my kids got me this chair, and it's a very nice chair. So you sit in the chair is what you do. If your kids get you the chair, you sit in the chair. Have somebody read it to you. I used to have my kids read stuff to me. I'm like, read this. Pretend like you're reading this as a book and let me practice this for a minute. That's okay. Sign to the music. Sometimes it that helps you with your analysis of it. Like, take notes anytime you're doing that too, because it'll just help you as you're putting your hands up. Then you're like, oh, this doesn't work. This does work. And then you can take your notes as you're going. And always try and rehearse with your team if you can. Okay, so we're not going to have time to do a lot of stuff together like I talked about before, but I want to do a little bit. So just, what does this mean? Don't you Google it. Nobody Google. Look, I'm looking at y'all. Just type in real quick what you think this means. This is, and if you know what it is, put it in there too, if you know what it's from. But waits at the window, wearing the face that she keeps in a jar by the door. Who sings there? What do you think it means? Matthew said, I don't know. I'm going to be the first to say. I've got no clue. Eleanor Rigby. Yes, Paul. Showing her true self. Fake smile. It is a song lyric, Vonda. Yes. Showing her fake face to others. These are good. Okay. So I like some of the things that you guys are saying, but here's where research comes in that is needed. Actually, what this is she's trying to look younger, and she is wearing the face in the jar that she keeps by the door. The door is cold cream. So she has on her cold cream, and she's trying to appear younger. So the reason I put this particular one in here, because this might make me change my interpretation of it as I'm doing that, because I want to try to add some meaning to that as well. So if I just did this, if I was interpreting, that might not give the whole essence of the song and what they're trying to do. I know, never would have guessed, right? The only reason I know is because I had to do it for a show. And so I'm like, oh, okay, let me look this up. And I'm like, ooh, I'm going to put this in that workshop I'm working on. So it's helpful to look up the lyrics to find this out. And then it helps me to be able to say that and put the information out there, and to give that little bit of meaning if I can. Now, here's another thing that I want you to be mindful of. When you're working on this stuff, we get real passionate about it too. Some of you do, some of you don't. I don't know. But we have to be very mindful of the information that we're putting out and how we're putting it out. And what that means is, don't lose the English side of it either. We don't want to get so focused. Now, I'm telling you, there's some amazing performance interpreters out there. I see their videos all over Facebook, and I know a couple of them, and they're wonderful, and I love them. I love watching them and stealing stuff. Told you I'm a thief. So I think that's great, though. That's how we put things in our bag of tricks. However, if you are doing a performance interpreting, that's different from I'm interpreting. Meaning, make sure that you include some of this English in there with it, because people are coming sometimes because they know these songs and they want to see that in there. They need to be able to recognize that, especially if they're coming to see, if they're doing Rain, which is the Beatles, and they're coming to, and they want to know, they want to hear some of that. If I'm doing what this means compared to the words that they grew up with, that's gonna cause some confusion. So we want to make sure that we include some of that English in there. And I'll tell you, when just a quick little note on that is, I was actually doing a community event one time, and I had shared this same school of thought with the interpreter that I was working with, but they were so excited about their rendition of them. They had really analyzed the meaning to everything, and they were so excited, and it was beautiful. It really was. But I was like, just be careful, because people come because they know these artists, and they know these artists, and so they're looking for these words that they grew up with. And so she got out there, and she was on the stage, and she was killing it. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And I looked up at her, and I had my back to the audience, and I looked up at her, and all of a sudden she flipped on a dime and started going straight English. Straight English. It went from this rendition to straight English. And I was like, okay, still great product. And I'm like, okay, what happened? So then afterwards I said, I'm just curious. I said, I kind of just wanted to know, I noticed that you made a decision to switch over towards the English. And I just wonder why. And she said, the deaf audience was talking crap about me. She said they were saying the interpreter doesn't know the songs. The interpreter doesn't know this band. They don't know the songs. And she was like, you're right. You know, that's why they came, because they know the music. So that's on that level of it. If they're coming, so we don't want to lose all of the words of it. So try to incorporate things. My point is, be flexible when it comes to that. Don't be so hard-nosed to really dig out that meaning. Yes. Oh, yes. Always feedback from the audience. It was hilarious how she switched, though. We definitely take feedback from our audiences. Okay, so some challenges that are out there. I got to rock and roll, you guys. Okay. My time is ticking and I'm trying to get all this information in. So what you do want to do is you want to avoid finger spelling at all costs, especially if you're doing any type of performance interpreting, because if there is an audience involved, then it's going to be hard for them to catch that. It's going to be hard for them to see it. If the child is in a classroom even, and they're doing the reading where they all take turns with the characters, it's going to be hard for the student even sometimes to like get that information out there if it's their cue for something else. So we try to avoid that if we can, but especially in the big crowds. Try not to use the names of the characters. And what that means is some people will look through the script and they'll say, you know, Romeo a million times or whatever. They'll say the person's name over and over and over and over again. You don't have to use their name over and over again. Just do what they're saying. Interact with them. So if it's the person beside me and they're saying, Sally did the, you know, Sally, you have to do this, and Sally, you have to come with me, and Sally, I'm not going to do Sally each time, or I'm not going to do a name sign of Sally each time. I'm just going to go, you need to come on, and we need to get out of here. So I just incorporate that into the whole scene of it so that it doesn't look like I'm just constantly signing this person's name. So that's the pointing to the character. And I keep name signs fairly simple. I just keep them. I don't do too many elaborate name signs. I know Romeo, I think he has like an established name sign for whatever reason, but I don't even think Juliet might, I don't know. But I try not to get too elaborate with them. Now, there's some cool ones out there and people come up with some great name signs when it comes to this, but I just don't spend too much time on that because I think the interaction as the character is usually a better way to address it. So I tell people, try to keep it simple. Don't go too much overboard. Okay, so if we don't understand what it is, then we're going to struggle. We're going to struggle with the interpreting part of it. So that's where it comes to the research. And that's when it comes to reaching out to people that are in the field, that do this more often. So use your resources, because we're not going to do as well if we don't do that research. And I was talking about that quote before. So we have to know, well, little things like, is it a song? Is it a speech? Like, where did this come from? What is this a part of? And that's going to help us with those decisions. And then the goal of the speaker, even. We have to do that when we're interpreting, period. We have to think, okay, what does this mean? And what's the speaker's goal? And where do I move and how do I apply this going forward? So I need to think of that in these stories and in these concerts, like, what's the goal of this? And that's going to help me weed out the things that aren't necessary. And it's also important for another reason. So if the goal of the speaker is to entertain, if it's a Dr. Seuss book, then the goal of the speaker is to entertain. So we don't have to get so stuck on those words. If we can come up with some things, if we can make it visual, if we can Google it and find a deaf person that signed it and what they did with the play on language, there's some amazing interpreters and deaf people out there that have this alliteration with the hands, that they have all kinds of crazy things going on and it looks amazing. So we just have to look for it and research it. Know yourself. What are your strengths and your weaknesses? We talked about that with Glendon Alphabet. Like, what are my limits? Do I have some limits? Everybody has some limits. I've got limits. So what are those, and be able to identify those right away. And it doesn't mean that you're any less of an interpreter either, because you're not going to be as effective in that one as somebody else. It just means that's their strength. And if that's their strength and this one's my strength, that's where you want to be. That's the balance you want to have. Both of you are in your strength positions. And so this is going to be a little trickier if you opt to go for it. But if you can follow blocking, because in the theater, they have blocking on the stage. And that blocking is where the characters are going to stand as they are interacting with each other. Now, when I went to Juilliard, we followed the blocking of the characters. That's a little bit more of a challenge, especially if you have a lot of characters and you're a lot of characters. So it's like remembering where my characters are. If it's not an option, what I try to do is the newer interpreter that hasn't done this very often, I get them to stand the furthest away and I'll stand closer in, because you can't turn back and look at the stage. You're in character. So you're not doing this. You're not watching the show. We shouldn't be. We should be in character. And so because they're newer, they can kind of, if they're looking at me, they can glance and see the stage, and that makes them a little bit more at ease. And so that's something that they can kind of build up to. All right, let's talk about that eye gaze. So during the show, eye gaze is important. Move this around. So if it's something small, if you're in the library, if you're in the classroom, then I'm going to have to keep that eye gaze with the student. I'm going to keep that connection that I'm used to having. And so that's pretty much going to be the way you work with your eye gaze. If you're in a large setting, the audience is going to be, because you don't know where a deaf person might be. They're probably in the front. You're going to have light shining on your face. So you just need to stay in the role of the character. You don't want to keep your head to one certain place the whole time and the people over here on this side can't see you at all. So you want to have that interaction, even if you're talking to them, oh, blah, 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 but this, and this, and turn out and then kind of go back so that they can kind of see you from any side that you're working from. No, well, that's not the way we trained. That's not the way that the programs that I've been to trained us, because the only time we're to look at the stage is if we're directing the consumer to look at the stage. So in other words, let's say there's a big dance sequence going on or something. So then we would turn, and then that means you need to look at the stage. But if I'm looking at the stage during the interpretation, that means I don't know what I'm doing. But why do I shouldn't have to look up there, because I'm already in it. I know where I am. The same reason as we don't have our scripts there in front of us either. Scripts don't sit there, because we should already know our parts. We should already know what we're doing by then. So I don't need to look at the stage. I've previewed it enough to now I know what's already going on. So if I look at the stage, it's going to be for a reason. It means we're going to turn. That's what the programs and that seems to be has worked very well. But that's what they taught us at the programs that I've been to. All right, let me see. I keep on moving my chat box so I can see you guys. And it could be something funny is coming. Like, I know in A Christmas Carol, they have like the big Ghost of Christmas Future or whatever. And when I say big, I mean, he's like 8 foot tall. It's like this, I don't even know what's inside. It's like stilts and stuff. It's crazy. So we kind of direct our eye gaze, try to get over that way, because it's kind of dark in that section. So it's a little harder to see. So we don't loud them out by going over there, but we just kind of, turn our heads that way so that they can easily go, what are they doing? And then they're like, oh, it's actually kind of awesome. And then I avoid la, 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 la. If it's a song, I try to show the music, and I just try to, if there's something like that that's going on, then I try to show that that's happening, because, you know, that's more of the visual of it. Once again, you are not the show. I always emphasize that because sometimes we get really excited. In the classroom, you look at the board or the teacher. Oh, so if you're in the classroom, yes, that's, if I'm in the classroom, although, good question. So if I'm in the classroom, I look at the teacher because the only reason I look at the teacher usually is because I'm trying to figure something out, or I'm trying to figure out what they're saying, or the student needs to look at the teacher because I'm listening to them and I'm just interpreting. So I don't look at them often, but I look at the board to direct their eyes that way. Okay, this is what the teacher just said. Now, this isn't a lesson. Now, if it's a movie and I'm in the classroom interpreting it, I don't keep looking at the movie. My neck would break by the time I did that. So I don't do that. And again, unless I'm trying to direct someone to look at that. So my neck's not going to turn around too terribly much because it hurts. So, but in the auditorium, when you're in a bigger show, that's when it's hard to explain it unless it's kind of like earlier, I don't know if you're in the workshop before, when my eye gaze was kind of everywhere and you're like, she's processing. So if I put my hands down and I turn around and I look this way, then we're expecting something. So and that's why I do that. So I'm not saying not to do it, but I'm doing it as a tool because we're expecting something. In the classroom, I might turn because I'm expecting you to look over here because the teacher has showed this as an example. I'm expecting you to look at the teacher because she's saying, look at her for this reason. So there's usually a reason behind what we're doing. If I'm sitting here interpreting and then I'm going like this, and then I'm going like this a lot, that student's going to do that too. They're going to keep directing because they're going to go, what's going on? Why are you looking over there? What's going on? Why? So what I'm saying is we do it for a reason. There's an intent behind it usually. Hope that makes sense. Now, we try to stay in your character if you can, rather than just kind of looking down at the ground, unless your character's not there for any reason. Like maybe the character left, and so you got to wait on your character to come back, and rather than get up and physically move, you kind of stay there. But I try to stay engaged. So just because my character's singing or whatever they're doing, signing or telling a story, if the other character on stage, I look at them usually, and I'm like, what are they doing? That's what I do during my preview. So if I'm watching them during my preview, I'm like, oh, okay, so they're kind of gazing at them. They're kind of watching them this whole time. So rather than me doing this, then I kind of do this too. And I kind of look at them kind of like they would, you know, so I'm trying to stay in that character, if that makes sense. And that's what I was talking about before, when you kind of keep your head turned out so you don't end up with your back turned the whole time. I hope that makes sense too. All right, so these are some of the tricks that I've kind of learned along the way that were helpful. Cough drops, apparently I need that, or apparently I need a Mountain Dew. So there you go. I keep cough drops with me whenever I'm working in my interpreting bag, in the school, even if it's at, you know, a performance at night, a concert, I try to keep them in my pocket, like on my waistband, unwrapped, so I can pop them in there if I need to. It's one of those things where you always get a tickle in your throat when you shouldn't, when it's supposed to be quiet or something, or you're trying to work and then all of a sudden you're dying. So you never know when that's going to happen. I just like to be preemptive. I keep a water bottle. Of course I said it. So what happens? Everybody take a water break so the presenter can live out what's on the screen. Keep a water bottle close by, but hidden. We don't want to have it sitting on the stage behind us. Sometimes we forget and we'll just like leave something up there. It's like, oh, let me put that down, because we don't want to distract from the show. Careful not to lean on the stage. It's kind of like the arms and the chairs. We can start getting dependent on something, and next thing you know, we're leaning, we got our legs crossed in front of us. And what that does is it just can kind of limit your mobility if you're trying to turn. So these are, like I said, these are tricks that I've just kind of learned myself over the years. And it is tempting if it's a long show. when I was doing, oh, what was the one? It wasn't a Raisin in the Sun. It was the Mockingbird, the To Kill a Mockingbird. I remember doing that in a high school class, and it was already tough enough because there were so many characters, and it was only me up there doing that. And so I was definitely getting to the point of, whoo, I need to do something. Now, please be mindful as well. If this is just you and you're like, I don't get a team, Sabrina. I am in this high school class and I'm doing Shakespeare by myself. So the team that you speak of is not going to happen. Make provisions for yourself as far as, I am going to sit in a chair even though I stand every day. Like, I am going to get a chair because I'm going to be up here for 3 solid hours today or whatever, however long this block is. And that's okay. We want to do the best that we can, but if that means sitting, that's fine too. We want to be comfortable as well. We just don't want to be too comfortable. Have a plan of escape in case something does happen. There have been times where, you never know what's going to happen. All of a sudden, I feel sick. That's happened to me when I've just been interpreting before. And I'm up there and I look at my team and I'm like, I'll be back, because I'm literally like physically going to be sick. So, but I like to prepare for those things. As you know, I prepare worst case scenario. So we talk about that as a team before it even happens. So they know if I walk out the door, if my team knows I'm the show, she just gets right up there, she pops in my seat or whatever, or she just sits there and she takes over my characters and she just keeps going. So it's like a plan that we have, but then we know, I'll be back if I can. If not, I'll see you tomorrow at work. Look, at least we're prepared for it. I talked about the honorary thing as well earlier. So we have the plan of escape in case something does happen. But another thing that can happen when you're working, and if you've ever done even the smallest play in the classroom or even in the theater, you're going to accidentally overlap each other. You're going to steal each other's characters. There's going to come times when, things don't go right. And we just forgive each other and keep going. It's nothing that I go, oh no, that's my song. That's my song. I prep for that. That doesn't happen. We just go, okay, you got this. Okay. I remember one time I was working and my team kept saying, what are you going to do for the song? And I was like, I don't know. I'm struggling with that one. And we kept talking about it. And then when it came time for the song, for whatever reason, I didn't recognize the first chord when it came up. And I looked at her and she looked at me. And then about that time, she put her hands up and she started signing it. And I was like, oh, that was my song. So I let her go. And at the end of it, and I said, remember when you asked me what I was going to do with that song? That. I'm just going to let you take it. Because I didn't do it on purpose, but you're like, I don't want to work with her ever. All right, I've got to go through this quick. So mistakes I have made. I've dressed too formal. I might have gotten excited when I first started, way a long time ago, because I hadn't gone to these programs that I've been to now. And so the theater, you're supposed to be in the theater. So I dressed too formally at night. And it was like, I didn't need to do that. I didn't need to be, I was an attendee, so I didn't need to do that. I literally have also done a performance where the team in the auditorium, the team was sitting there and I was up here and we did 20 minutes, 20, 20, 20, 20 for a play. That it's not really good. So, and again, I didn't know, and I've learned School of Hard Knocks and training over the years. Oh, characters, we should be characters. And that's going to help out much more. Taking turns with songs, like jumping back and forth, thinking that, oh, you get this song, you get this song. It doesn't work as smoothly that way. And the deaf person's like, oh, you're up, you're up, you're up. And so no. As I said, the music stand in front of you, we don't do that anymore. We take that away because we're very familiar with it. It looks nice and smooth. We're part of the show. There's no more in the beginning. That's what we did. And we flipped the pages. And now we don't have to depend on that anymore. All right, guys. So we have a couple more minutes. I'm just putting that up there for the moment. So some of the things that I want you to take away from today are when it doesn't matter whether we're in elementary or through high school. The theater is in the classroom. we are actors in what we do, and we're going to be theatrical interpreting even with the smallest thing, from a book in the library to a movie that the teacher plays to popcorn reading, whatever it is. We actually end up becoming theatrical interpreters in that sense. I had gone years ago to an RID National Conference, and I went to the legal training beforehand. And it was funny because they actually had a judge come in, and the judge went through like a bunch of stuff with us and explained things. And the judge at the end said, you know, you guys are actors. And we were all like, no, we're not, we're interpreters. And the judge said, well, when you think about it, you guys are actors because you don't ever get to be yourself. You're always someone else. And I was like, huh. And that's a good way to look at it, because you know as well as I do, when a student is cussing out a teacher, that's not who we are, but we have to do that. Like, there are times in our career that we have to do things that we're like, this is just not me. So it's literally, we're putting on someone else's face every day. So we want to keep that in mind. And then that's just on that part of it alone. So when you think I'm not really an actor per se, we have to do some sort of acting to be another person. And then we can apply that also to the work that we do when we're here. I'm going to do this. Hold on. I don't know if you can still do this as well. I try to help you guys out too at the end. That is the same way with books too. Okay. I'm putting this, okay. I wanted you to have the link in there because I know some people are having trouble with that. Okay, guys. So you got 6 hours worth of workshop in an hour and a half, 3 times. I certainly appreciate you guys. I appreciate you putting up with me talking 90 miles an hour so I could squeeze as much information in your brain as I could. When we do the 6-hour workshop, you get to put your hands up, and you actually get to get up there and do songs, and you get to do plays, and you get to do all that. And it's very, very fun. At least I think it's fun. I hope you guys were able to get something out of this conference and learned a lot this weekend. I am very grateful to have been part of it and be with you guys again. I'd love to come back out there again on another day. I'm going to let Marcy take over and give you any codes that's needed. I did put the link in there if that would help you all. And I'm also going to put a link in here to get in touch with me. If you would ever like to get in touch with me, reach out to me, email me, any questions that you may have about interpreting in general. And I would be happy to help you with that. So,
all right, thank you, Sabrina. We appreciate it. You're getting lots of kudos in the chat. The code is CLASS, CLASS. Again, all caps, and it's CLASS, CLASS. And like Sabrina said, the link to the evaluation is in the chat, or you can go into Sched and access it there by clicking feedback. If you have any questions, I'll hang out for a little bit and just either type them in the chat or unmute your microphone, and I'd be happy to help. Thanks so much. Have a great day.